Pumpkin spice is in the air. Let's talk about autumn. What's up, fellow plant enthusiasts? My name is Dylan Bain, and this is Bain's Botanicals. Today, we're going to be talking about autumn. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, we are quickly approaching the autumnal equinox, which this year occurs on September 23rd. Most years it occurs on the 22nd, but it can vary a little bit year to year. This is the time when the sun is going to be directly over the Earth's equator, making night and day almost exactly the same. This only occurs twice a year, once in the spring and once in autumn. And it's kind of the onset of our hemisphere starting to face away from the sun, which is why it starts to get colder. In the southern hemisphere, of course, it's going to start getting warmer, and lucky them. Actually, I do enjoy like autumn and a little bit of winter. My problem is that winter starts to get really boring after Christmas, and then it's just cold and dead for 2 months, and I just don't like it. But I do like autumn. I love the smells. I love pumpkin spice coffee and Halloween, and it's just awesome. Anyway, so this is the time of year where we need to start thinking about transitioning our plants out of the growing phase and into the kind of dormant phase. And this is going to be different from plant to plant, but these are some overall things that you should keep in mind. First, if you have plants that you have outside, you want to start thinking about bringing them in. Now, some plants you can just bring right in and they're not really going to care that much. But there are certain plants that it doesn't hurt to transition them a little bit slowly, just so that they can make that kind of a little more smoothly than if you just brought them in abruptly. Let's say you have a cactus, and it's a cactus that's pretty hardy and you've had it in the direct sun. If you want to bring that inside, it's probably a good idea to leave it outside until, obviously you don't want it to get frost, we'll get to there, but maybe move it onto a shady spot on your porch, just so that it's still getting a lot of ambient light from the sun, but it's no longer getting that direct sun, so that it can start to get used to not getting as much light. And like I said, you don't have to do this with all plants, but like let's say you have a weeping fig, a Ficus benjamina, like you could just bring it right in and it'll probably shed a bunch of leaves because that's what they do. But I mean, you could also transition a little bit. Maybe just, move it to a shady spot, or, bring it in just for a little bit during the day and then put it back out. But I don't know, those don't really like to be moved either. Maybe that's a bad example, but I think you understand what I'm saying, I hope. As far as frost goes, frost is the death of houseplants. Frost will kill your plants. It'll scorch them just like the sun would. There are plants that can stand up to frost, but they're outside plants. They're plants that are out there all the time. They're not tropical plants that never see frost. So just keep that in mind. Keep an eye on the weather. You don't want your plants to get damaged like that. It's not fun. Okay. Once you have your plants inside, all of my plants are already inside just because I usually don't put them outside. My front porch isn't very conducive to plants, and it's also very small. So I didn't bother this year, but it's fine. Once they're inside, once it gets to be about, let's say, October, you really want to start thinking about cutting back on your fertilizing. I've been doing bi-weekly since April. And once October starts, I'll probably fertilize one more time, maybe twice, and then I'm just gonna stop. Like I won't fertilize my plants again until next year. They don't need that fertilizer in the dormant period because they're not using as much nutrients as they do during the growing season. So they don't need all of that extra because they're just not going to use it. And if they don't use it, it's just going to sit there and it could potentially damage your plants. So just kind of keep that in mind. You want to transition them out of getting those nutrients. Also with water, we need to start thinking about cutting back on our watering. And again, it doesn't have to be right now because we are only in September, but once we get to October and we start noticing a lot of temperature changes, your plants aren't going to be using as much water. when they're dormant and they're not getting enough, or not, I shouldn't say that, when they're not getting as much light, they just don't need that water because they're not using it to photosynthesize. Like they use water and light and everything during photosynthesis, so if they're not getting as much light, then they shouldn't be getting as much water. And the same can be said for a plant that you maybe have in a dark corner in your house. Like you're not going to water that as much as you would as a plant that's right next to a window, again, because it's not getting as much light. So that ratio of light to water is something you have to keep in mind. This is especially true with cacti and succulents because they really go dormant. Like a lot of houseplants don't necessarily go through a dormant phase, like epipremnum. Like most pothos, they keep growing. They grow a little slower, maybe they grow a little bit leggier, but they don't really ever stop. Okay, my cat's just coughing. She's fine. Athena. Yeah, she's fine. You made me lose my train of thought, girl. We're talking about water. So, yes, water less when there is less light. Another thing that I kind of didn't think about until today was grow lights. So if you have your grow lights on a timer like I do, I have the light on for longer during the summer than I do in the winter. Now I have that, I do that to mimic what it would be like in nature, because even in Florida, let's say, the tropics, there are going to be shorter days in Florida. It's still going to stay tropical, it's still going to stay warm, but the light isn't going to be there as long because Florida is above the equator. That being said, you should maybe think about transitioning your grow lights back. Maybe do it an hour in October and then maybe do it another hour in November. You don't want to cut it back too much because obviously your plants still need light, and plants that are under grow lights still aren't getting as much light as they would if they were outside in nature. So just kind of don't do it too much. I mean, there's probably a lot more research out there on exactly like, depending on how much light your grow light puts off and everything. I'm just trying to keep it simple, but just something to keep in mind, because even plants that are next to your window, they're naturally just going to get less light anyway if you're not using grow lights, like just because there's not going to be as much sun in the wintertime. Oh, a holiday cactus. If you have a holiday cactus, this is about the time you need to start thinking about if you want it to flower. Schlumbergera is the genus for Christmas cactus and Thanksgiving cactus. In order to get them to flower big, a lot of times you have to put them into a really dark place for maybe a month and don't give them any water. Like you're basically shocking them into flowering when they start to bloom, which sounds kind of cruel and unusual, but I don't know, plants like to flower, that's kind of what they do, right? So I haven't done Schlumbergera yet. I will. I don't know if I'll get to it before the holidays though, but that's just another thing to keep in mind. You can also do that in the spring with Easter cactus, just because they bloom at a different time. So probably about February, you'd probably want to think about, okay, well, I need to get this thing dark and dry so that when I water it and give it light again, it's going to be like, hey, I can flower, everything is great. So just a couple of quick little things that you might not know about autumn. The trees outside that lose their leaves are deciduous trees because they lose their leaves at the end of the growing season and they replenish them in spring. The ones that don't lose their leaves are coniferous, and they're mostly conifers like the pines and everything because they just keep their leaves all year long. Needles on a pine are just modified leaves that are they evolved to withstand like the desiccation of wind and cold. So that's why the further up north you go, the more you just see pines because they're, they can adapt really well to cold. The truth is though that all plants lose leaves. It's just at what frequency and time do they lose them? Deciduous plants, they just lose them all at once at the end of the season. Coniferous plants do lose needles, but they just lose them over a period of time, and they replenish them as they lose them. So why do the leaves change outside? This is kind of a fun tidbit. The leaves change because as the weather starts to cool down and the light becomes less, deciduous plants stop producing chlorophyll. They slowly cut back on how much chlorophyll they're producing. And chlorophyll is what makes leaves green to begin with. Like anything that's a green plant has chlorophyll in it. That's what they use to photosynthesize. As the chlorophyll gets less and less, all that's left in the leaf are other compounds that reflect different colors of light. Without getting too sciencey, like when you see a color, like you're looking at a green leaf, the leaf is green because it's reflecting green light. So when the chlorophyll's gone, all that's left are compounds that are reflecting other colors of light. Mind blown. So one of those compounds that is in all the different colors of leaves are carotenoids. Now, carotenoids are always present in leaves, but again, as that chlorophyll stops being produced, you see more of the colors that the carotenoids produce. So yellow is one of the big ones. So if you see a yellow leaf, that's going to be carotenoids and flavonoids. If a leaf is orange, it's going to be carotenoids and specifically beta-carotene. Now beta-carotene is the same thing that's responsible for making carrots orange. So another little fun fact. And red leaves are carotenoids and anthocyanins. Anthocyanins are really only produced when autumn starts. So as the chlorophyll draws back, the tree starts producing anthocyanins, and that is one of the things that make leaves red. I think I like red leaves the best. I mean, yellow leaves are pretty, but I feel like when we see yellow leaves on our plants, it's like, oh crap, it's gonna lose that leaf. But red, a deep burgundy red is very beautiful. So yeah, that's just some fun facts about autumn. And it's fun to say words like anthocyanin. So I think that's all I have about autumn. Hopefully you guys are starting to think a little bit about what to do with your plants. I know that I'm thinking about that. I'm also thinking about the fact that I have too many plants. I'm looking around and they're everywhere, but it's okay. Thank you guys so much for following me and subscribing and liking and chatting with me in our videos and everything, because it's so much fun. I love learning from you guys and interacting with you guys, and I look forward to more. So until the next video, I will see you guys very soon, and thank you.